Well, here on this channel, I'm a big fan of Oregon State and Washington State and their battle against the other 10 schools in the Pac-12. But unfortunately, it's another enemy that they are working against now, it appears, that is not the other 10 schools. Welcome into the channel. I am John Kurtz. Here on this channel, we talk college football, college basketball, and conference realignment, all from a Big 12 angle predominantly. Please consider subscribing if you have not. I do live shows Wednesday and Sunday. They are a great time. A lot of people in here for those. I drop in content as well throughout the week. If you could like the video, I would much appreciate it. And subscribe if you have not, as well as you can support the channel on Venmo at John-Kurtz-4. So today I'm going to read you from a Jon Wilner article, the best there is at covering the Pac-12, writes for the Pac-12 Hotline. And he put together a story about a piece of the legal proceedings with the Pac-12 battle that we have not really digested much of here, and an interesting element to what is being discussed and what is going to have to be sorted out for everybody. So he starts by saying the outcome of a preliminary injunction hearing in Whitman County, Washington will help define the next move for all 12 schools and potentially determine the fate of tens of millions of dollars in Pac-12 assets. We know that. That is something we've been talking about for a while. There's been this back and forth. There was a ridiculous statement the other week from the 10 schools that are departing about how they are still entitled to a lot of this. And I think most common sense people would say, give the freaking war chest of money to the two schools that you're screwing over and leaving behind. But this is not what this article is about. Wilner says a court decision last week in Northern California added clarity to the other side of the ledger. The Pac-12 brand itself might morph into a massive liability. And remember, that's a big part of what is being fought for here by Oregon State and Washington State, protecting that Pac-12 brand. Potentially, they could do that reverse merger, pull in everybody from the Mountain West, and utilize them under the Pac-12 brand. U.S. District Court Judge Claudia Wilkins' ruling in an antitrust case pushed the NCAA closer to paying billions of dollars in damages. Specifically, Wilkins granted class action status to a 3-level lawsuit aimed at compensating thousands of former college athletes for the use of their name, image, and likeness. The so-called House lawsuit, named after its former Arizona State swimmer Grant House, is seeking $1.4 billion in damages from the NCAA and its member schools, according to court documents. Well, not all the member schools, only those in the Power 5 conferences. So where is this going? If Washington State and Oregon State gain control of the governing board and attempt to rebuild the conference under the Pac-12 banner, they could be subject to whatever damages emerge from the lawsuit or any settlement between the plaintiffs and the NCAA. Okay, so to recap here, big lawsuit, 1.4 million or billion rather on the line in damages to be paid out for NIL stuff from the past in NCAA athletics, and it would only happen to the Power 5 schools. So if Oregon State and Washington State were to leave for the Mountain West, potentially they would avoid having to pay whatever this is. If they were to stay and protect that Pac-12 brand and that Pac-12 name, they could be hit with the responsibility of this because they would technically still be a Power 5 league. And they've been fighting for that same status, like with the college football playoff, right? It would be, honestly, to me, feels kind of akin to George Kliavkoff trying to say, like, look, these schools that are leaving, they can still be board members, even though we have evidence of him being like, nope, USC, UCLA, not board members, Colorado, not board members. Kind of goes against what you've been fighting for already. But what if the Cougars and Beavers instead, I'm back to the article, but what if the Cougars and Beavers instead decide to join the Mountain West, which is not part of the lawsuit? Would they still be on the hook for damages? That piece is less clear, according to a source with knowledge of the case. Quote, the case will be settled. There's no way it's going to court, but there's a lot to be sorted out. One aspect of the Pac-12 legal fight unfolding in Washington State seems abundantly clear. Attorneys for both plaintiffs and the defendants are not solely focused on the conference's assets, which include the NCAA tournament units and Rose Bowl contracts worth tens of millions of dollars. Quote, who's responsible if it all goes away? The source said. What are the liabilities? What about the lease on the production studio? What about the litigation? It's one of the biggest issues. There's no greater potential liability than the House class action lawsuit. So to recap that, we think of the fight of this being about money that would be earned. The college football playoff money, the NCAA tournament money, the quote-unquote war chest that is talked about here that could be hundreds of millions of dollars for Washington State and Oregon State if they were to gain control of it. But if they do that, then they also would be responsible for the myriad of lawsuits that were coming out against the Pac-12 that we've talked about on this channel for a year now. The production cost, the studio that they left in San Ramon. There are a lot of liabilities here working against the league too that could also fall onto the shoulders of those two schools. And this, according to the source that Jon Wilner is referencing here, They say there's no greater potential liability than the House class action lawsuit. So of all the stuff we talked about, this is much more significant. The article says, at its core, the lawsuit aims to compensate athletes for the use of their name, image, and likeness over a multi-year period before NIL was legalized. But unlike the current rules for NIL, which allow compensation for promotional and endorsement opportunities, the House lawsuit targets the number one source of cash for the Power 5 media rights revenue. Experts for the plaintiffs believe the athletes' NIL accounts for 10% of the market value of the media contracts. So if the Big Ten's $1 billion annual deal with Fox, CBS, and NBC were framed by the argument presented in the House case, the conference's athletes would get $100 million of that total valuation and should be compensated fairly. Wilkin, the presiding judge, has ruled against the NCAA in previous cases, including the Ed O'Bannon case. So saying basically, you're likely to get a ruling against the NCAA here. Then the athletes would be entitled to 10% of the media deals. Wilner takes it through and carries it out to get like what a general ballpark figure might be, and it would be $46 million per school. So this is a big deal for everybody. I mean, thinking about your Big 12 school, if you're all of a sudden on the hook for, even if you're going to lowball that, $40 million to be paying out to your former student athletes, where are these athletic departments going to come up with that? That's a tough putt. But now that's what's on the line potentially for Washington State and Oregon State. They could be thinking here, like, if we just go to the Mountain West, we'll avoid having this $46 million lump sum payment potentially to have to be making. Wilner does point out the actual damages would differ because the conference media contracts at the heart of the case weren't equal and the number of scholarship athletes at each school varied, but our math provides a sense of the massive sum at stake. How might the House lawsuit affect the fractured Pac-12? Presumably, the 10 departing members would carry the damages with them into their new homes in the ACC, Big 12, and Big 10. Yeah, so the 10 departing members, I mean, they're going to have to be worrying about this just like everybody else. There's not much that they can do. But Washington State and Oregon State could perhaps, with the support of 10 other schools, move to the... Well, let me start this over. But what if Washington State and Oregon State, perhaps on their own, perhaps with the governing support of the 10 other schools, move to dissolve the Pac-12? Would the House case follow the Cougars and Beavers into the Mountain West? Their annual revenue would plunge. Could they somehow avoid the damages? And I'm no legal expert, but that seems to be where you would have much more of a case like, hey, we're not going to be somewhere where we would be capable of paying this back because we're not going to be getting that same sort of Power 5 money at this point if that is what we do. And might the lawsuit impact their decision to rebuild the conference? Like so much else on the legal front, the outcome is deeply muddied and enormously significant for the two remaining schools. I think basically the idea here is just like this is another very complicated situation. This is another complicating factor for these schools to be thinking of. And the biggest thing that I just don't envy them for is like trying to come up with budgets and figuring out schedules and everything you're doing. I mean, it's just another big hurdle. It's just another big roadblock for Oregon State and Wazzu to figure out what they're going to do here in the future. And that is such an unenviable position to be in. I don't know, man. And it's November 8th. Like, we're getting close here. We've got 3 weeks left in the college football regular season, and it doesn't feel like much of this has moved very much closer to a significant resolution here for them. So, look, I will say it again. I've said it before. I wish the best to Oregon State and Washington State. I hope they come out of this as good as they possibly can. And hopefully something gets sorted out that's not going to saddle them with a crazy, crazy bill to be paying for NIL over the last handful of years out of this lawsuit. But something for everybody to have on their radar to be thinking about moving forward. All right. Appreciate all of you guys for being here. Consider subscribing if you have not. Big 12 football, Big 12 basketball, conference realignment, college football, college hoops, all here on this channel all week, every week. Wednesday, Sunday live shows. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you want to support the channel, and I'd appreciate it if you give the video a like or leave a comment, even if you love me or hate me, agree or disagree, all of that is welcome in the comments. Take care, guys, and I will talk to you soon.